Hello, my name is Shu Mei Hoon and I am a lawyer with Wong Partnership. Today I am here with you as part of Sassy Mama's Ask the Experts series, and I'm here to answer all of your most pressing questions on divorce and family law in general. And the first question today is, what are the steps to get a divorce in Singapore? Are there any extra steps to take if I'm from overseas or I got married overseas? Okay, first, to apply for divorce proceedings in Singapore, assuming you're not a Singapore citizen or PR, we look to see whether you are domiciled or you consider Singapore a permanent home. Otherwise, you have to be a resident in Singapore for at least 3 years. If you've not been here for at least 3 years, then you'd have to wait because otherwise your application for divorce will be rejected. If you also have children in Singapore or minor children, then you would have to attend a mandatory parenting program provided by our Ministry of Social and Family Development. That's free and it's just part of the process to ensure that parents understand the kind of consequences which occur for the family, the entire family, keeping the child's best interests in mind when divorce proceedings are commenced. And if you are an expat and you have lived in Singapore for less than 3 years, you can either seek legal advice in your home country to see whether you can file divorce proceedings in your home country, or you could consider entering into negotiations in the meantime with your spouse to see whether you can agree on terms of the divorce. You can also sign a separation deed, which would set out the terms of the divorce or in terms of the separation, which you can then later incorporate into your divorce papers and will later go into the order of court related to the divorce. And further to the first question, if you're wanting to apply for divorce, you also have to ensure that legally the courts would consider that your marriage has broken down irretrievably, and there are one of five facts you would have to prove in the courts. First is that your spouse has committed adultery and you find it intolerable to live with him. Secondly, he has behaved in a manner that's been so unreasonable that you cannot be expected to live with him. Third, you have already been separated from him for a period of 3 years, at least 3 years, and he agrees to the divorce. Fourth, you are both separated for at least 4 years, and it doesn't matter whether he consents to the divorce or not. And last, he has deserted you, which means that he has usually for desertion, it means that he has left for at least a period of 2 years. Okay, if you're wanting to return home to your home country with your children and you're separated in the meantime, it is best to get written consent from your spouse, because if you do not have written consent from your spouse may accuse you of having abducted the children internationally, in which case he might then try and apply to the courts to have the children returned back to Singapore on the basis that he didn't consent to their removal. If you have commenced divorce proceedings, or your spouse has already commenced divorce proceedings, then the proper way of removing the children would be to apply to the Singapore courts if you're resident in Singapore and the children are based here, and the Singapore courts would give you leave to relocate back to your home country, and this is on the assumption that your spouse has not provided you with written consent for you to relocate back home with the children. If you're wanting to just go overseas with the children and divorce proceedings have commenced, your travel overseas with the children is limited to only 1 month. Anything beyond a month, you would fall back on the earlier position, which is that you would require written consent to relocate, or else an order of court granting you permission to relocate overseas. If your spouse does not agree to you relocating to your home country with your children, you would have to apply to court for permission to return to your home country. The court would look at primarily what is the best interest of the children. Would it be to remain in Singapore or to relocate? And considerations such as your plans for them when they move back, their schooling, their residence will come into question, as well as what access the non-custodial spouse will get, given that the relocation is to a different country. Will such access be difficult to take given the distance? The courts really just want to ensure that the children's welfare is protected, and that also includes ensuring that their relationship with both parents are continued. And so they want to ensure that any relocation is in the best interest of both children. Such proceedings can be quite long and drawn out if there is no consent provided before the hearing, and if there's an appeal, it can even take longer. If you're married and your husband suddenly stops paying you maintenance for yourself and the children, you would be able to apply to the Singapore courts for maintenance for yourself and the children if you're legally married. The Singapore courts will look at a range of factors such as what lifestyle your husband was maintaining you and the children, parties' income, so both sides' income, your needs and financial responsibilities, as well as financial income elsewhere, whether there is any reason really for him to have stopped paying you maintenance, because there could be good reasons such as retrenchment or loss of job, in which case the court may allow a suspension of maintenance until he gets back on his feet, or they might still order that he pays maintenance. If you are not legally married and you have children resident in Singapore and you and your spouse are both in Singapore, you can also apply for maintenance for your child or children if he suddenly stops providing for them. To do so, you would just have to lodge a complaint in the family court and affirm it before a magistrate. If you're on a DP and you or your spouse has commenced divorce proceedings, your right to remain in Singapore shouldn't be affected. That being said, it is possible that your spouse may try and cancel your DP, whether by himself or through his employers if he obtained his DP through if his DP is sponsored by his employers. And quite often we have seen in cases that the ICA does proceed to cancel the DP, in which case you could appeal to them to ask that your DP is not cancelled, or that you be moved to a long-term visitor's pass so that you can remain in Singapore for a longer period while the divorce is sorted. And if your children are residing in Singapore and they are studying in Singapore and their student's pass, you will also probably be able to get yourself on a long-term visitor's pass if your DP has been cancelled. Short of that, you would have to seek employment if you are wanting to stay in Singapore for the long term, so that your employers can apply for a work pass or work permit for you. What happens if the courts were to divide your assets? First, the courts would look at what would be considered matrimonial assets, and that's their legal definitions of what constitutes matrimonial assets. Secondly, they would look at your contributions, both sides' contributions, both financial as well as indirect, which can be financial as well as non-financial. So sometimes spouses are concerned if they have been homemakers or they're not working as to whether their contributions will count. So as much as possible, the court will give credit based on also the length of marriage, the number of children that parties have had, to contributions which are non-financial, such as caregiving efforts, staying at home, quitting one's job to stay at home, any kind of support to the spouse's business. All of these non-financial contributions can be taken into account. If the court has made a maintenance order and your husband or ex-husband proceeds to breach it, you can apply to enforce the order. The court has quite a wide ambit of powers, including the ability to obtain security by way of a banker's guarantee, attach his earnings in relation to the arrears. So that means that every month a portion of his earnings will go straight to your maintenance. It will come directly from his salary. Financial counseling is also one way. Community service and as an absolute kind of last resort, imprisonment. In relation to maintenance, if you are a woman and you are the financial breadwinner of the family, you do not have to pay your husband maintenance unless he is disabled. The Women's Charter only provides that husbands pay their wife or former wife maintenance if in fact the court finds that it's a case suitable for maintenance to be paid, but not the other way around. If you're a mom and you're contemplating getting a divorce and you have exhausted your means to try and salvage the marriage, then I would consider seeking legal advice as to what your next steps are. You can first also begin by keeping your receipts in relation to your expenses and the children's expenses, so that you understand what your expenses are monthly as well as the children's expenses, as well as keep any kind of invoices or documentation in relation to your contributions towards the matrimonial assets. If you are intending to apply for divorce on the basis that your husband committed adultery or his behavior was unreasonable, then you might want to consider also obtaining evidence in relation to that, whether by way of SMS messages, WhatsApps, emails, photographs, etc., should the matter become contested. Thank you so much for watching. For more information, please visit Sassy Mama Singapore. Thank you.